Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, folks, it is time for some more of the darkest and strangest disappearances. This is always a very weird and unsettling topic, because, you know, some of them were like, we know, but we don't know, while others are just so baffling they make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Because sometimes it's just like, you know, how is that even possible? Don't know, but it happened. And once again, we're gonna go through this iceberg style, which is the stories get darker and more disturbing as we go on. But before we get into it, please click that subscribe button to see new stories for the dark every single week. Now, let's give it a go, big dog. First up, let's talk about the baffling disappearance of one Tyler Davis, a father and a husband who, you know, during what should normally be a short walk home, well, he didn't get there. In fact, he didn't get where. Tyler Davis was born and raised in Ohio, and come 2019 was 29 years of age. He'd been married to his wife Brittany for about 2 years by this time, though they had been close friends for much longer, and together they had a son, also coming up on 2 years, named Aaron. And if you go onto Tyler's Facebook page, you'll see why. Tyler and Brittany, they'd only been married for kind of a relatively short time, but by all accounts they loved each other a lot. So things were busy, you know, between the two of them. Tyler, he was working a lot, they had a brand new baby, and Brittany, she also worked nights as a bartender, so it was kind of a pretty busy household. In 2019, he was working as a manager at a Wendy's, and he was described by, you know, his colleagues and his co-workers as a good-ass, one of them good-ass managers you would want to have. Like, this is what one wrote about him, quote, "More like a father figure than a manager, and he'd give us money, food, the clothes off his back. He hangs out with co-workers outside of work to play games almost weekly. His son is his life." So the strange story of Tyler Davis, it begins on February 23rd, 2019. Now, both Tyler, Brittany, and their son Aaron, they'd been living in the city of Wilmington, Ohio, small city, about 12,000 people. And just coming up to this stage, it was Brittany's birthday. She was turning 23 years on this goddamn planet. She was 6 years younger than our Tyler. So what the plan was, drop baby Aaron off at Tyler's parents' house, you know, the grandparents' house, and then head off to that jewel of Ohio, the Midwest's premier shopping, dining, and entertainment destination. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Easton Town Center. Basically, it's a big open-air shopping mall northeast of Columbus. They'd relax, they'd have some drinks, shop, massage, nice little getaway for just the two of them. And so they made the trek about 90 minutes from Wilmington to Easton Town Center and checked into the Hilton there at about 5 p.m. All good so far. In fact, they had friends in the area that they were planning on meeting up with, going for a few drinks with that night. You kind of know the drill yourself. In fact, that very night, the 23rd of February, they met up with a friend. His name wasn't initially released, but he was later identified as Sean Hughes. He was a longtime college buddy, in fact, of Tyler's. And it's that night, as they were out there in this Easton Town Center, like basically a big open-air shopping mall, that's when things got weird. So Tyler, Brittany, and John, they had been out partying pretty much all night. They worked nights mostly, so it would be very rare they would actually get out to go party themselves. They were drinking, then, you know, it was getting late. The only place left open was a strip club. Nice. And so they're having a good-ass time. At about 3 a.m., all of them lashed themselves into an Uber to take them back to the Hilton Hotel that they were staying at. It's sort of a blur what kind of happened there. I mean, you have 3 people up at 3 a.m. all have been on the beer all night, so things are going to be kind of blurry for everybody involved. But for some reason, Tyler, you know, when they arrived back at the hotel in the car, he was very agitated, confused, and upset. Brittany would say that both Tyler and John fell asleep in the Uber, so perhaps when she woke them up, say, "Oh, hey, we're here, you can get out." Tyler, you know, thought they were at the wrong hotel. You know, as I said, he probably would have been kind of a little bit out of it at that stage. Regardless, he was being a bit difficult, as you can imagine, and he said he wanted to go for a walk. Now, Brittany and John were like, "No, let's get you up to a room," but regardless, he was kind of like storming off. Brittany, she really had to use the bathroom. She heads into the hotel. John says, "I'll go walk with him for a bit, have a smoke, he'll calm down." Then, at 3:37 a.m., Tyler calls Brittany, who is up in the hotel, and he says, "I'm just, you know, walking around, I'm having a cigarette, Sorry if I was acting weird, you know, back at the Uber. Things are all good. I'll be up in a few minutes. Then shortly after, Brittany hears a knock, knock, knock on her hotel room door. She opens it, and it's John. But it's just John. He says, yeah, Tyler's down there. He's just finishing off a cigarette. He'll be up in a few minutes. But Tyler is not up in a few minutes. Then Tyler calls John on his phone and says he can't find the hotel, which is weird when it's like, I thought you were just like smoking outside or just down the road. I mean, you know, as you can see right on the map, it's a pretty open air, like big open air shopping center. It's not exactly the kind of place where you could, you know, feasibly get lost in. So he's trying to find his way back. Then a couple of minutes later at 4:10 a.m., Tyler calls Brittany saying he's in the woods, but he can see the hotel. He'll be there in a few minutes. But it's weird because there are no woods near the hotel. This is a shopping mall. He did call again, Brittany, a few minutes later, but this time there was just silence on the line. After that, Tyler's phone went dead, and he would never be heard from or seen again. It's like one of those things where it's, how is it possible for you to disappear in this place? John left the hotel to go home to his own house at about 4:30 a.m. I guess he just, was totally crashing, and they couldn't get in touch with Tyler. And so then Brittany, hours started to go by, and she's freaking out more and more and more. He said he'd be right up. They had never been to this place before. Where is he? She soon started calling around the local jails, the local hospitals, thinking maybe something happened, he got picked up. Nothing. She then calls some friends who also live in the area to start driving around. Nothing. She calls the cops. He's reported missing. Tyler would have been quite drunk when he was walking around outside, and this was winter in Ohio, so a little chilly, but searching the following morning he wasn't found passed out or anything. The police investigation was delayed. He's a grown man, he's drunk, he just walked off of his own accord, yada yada yada. But they couldn't find any clues as to where he went. The only thing, in fact the only clue to have to where Tyler was that his phone GPS, it was tracking him the entire way. Not his phone pings, the actual GPS. So they could have that accurate view of where he was going and where he was walking. And it showed pretty accurately where he was and how fast he was going, and he was walking at a medium pace, pretty consistently strutting through the area. In fact, this is the route he took, sort of a U-shape, walking through car parks and such. Now the thing is, when he called saying he was in the woods, his GPS was dead by this stage, so likely his phone went into, low power mode or something, where he could still call, but the other shit was turned off. His last known location was about 16 minutes south of the hotel. And this is such a strange route to take. This is away from the stores. This is in more of the industrial area. Car parks, offices, that sort of thing. And the woods are the strangest because there's no woods in this area. There's tiny little gardens and parks, out front of the offices. But I'm not talking deep-ass forests or anything here. There is one across from the hotel, but from the direction you would have been coming in, the hotel clearly visible on the left, the deep dark woods on the right, and they're not even that deep or dark at all. He wanted to get back to the hotel. There's a recording that the police released of him asking Siri to take him back to the hotel, but he never made it.
Take me to the Hilton, room 403, Columbus, Ohio. Let's go.
He would have been in a state pretty drunk, but I mean, he was walking at a medium pace, not stumbling that much where he could have fallen or something like that. He was able enough to make calls and to ask Siri to take him back to the hotel. It's one of these baffling stories where how was he not found? And how did he get lost? This isn't one of my national park horror stories, this is a guy disappearing in a mall.
One day, boy, you're gonna be too big for your dad to do that.
He is such a good dad. And it's just really frustrating when I'm trying my hardest to just stay strong for my son.
This little boy's father, Brittany Davis's husband, Tyler, hasn't been seen or heard from since February 24th. Brittany's birthday. They had planned a birthday celebration at the Easton Town Center in Columbus.
I'm like, oh my gosh, this hotel is so nice. It's huge. Look at this whole area. There's a Tiffany's over there. This just makes no sense.
2 months later, Brittany says she's still searching for answers.
I'm not giving up. I'm not ever going to stop.
And at Columbus Police Headquarters,
he's been missing for 221 days as of today.
Missing Persons Detective Jason Brommer shows the evidence collected so far. A map of Easton, time-stamped, next to yellow pushpins showing the path Tyler walked. Still photos of Brittany, Tyler, and his friend Sean at Easton Town Center. Nearby wetlands being searched. And Tyler arriving back at the Hilton at 3:18 a.m. after partying before he disappeared.
There have been many theories as to what happened, from human trafficking, which seems unlikely that they would want a 30-year-old man, to him getting in the wrong car, maybe robbed and killed, to a hit and run, and then his body was taken away. That maybe Brittany and John had, something to do with it, but, well, no, we're fairly sure that they didn't. They didn't even want Tyler to go for a walk, and Brittany was for sure back in the hotel. Maybe he's still in the area. The extensive searches that happened, they just missed him. There were small bodies of water that wouldn't have been deep that were searched. Maybe they missed him? In December 2021, a judge declared Tyler Davis legally dead. But that doesn't change the fact that we simply don't know what happened to Tyler, and it's so strange to disappear in the area he did. It's a baffling case. This next story is ongoing. Well, okay, I mean, all these stories are ongoing, but this one is like going right up to now. It's about the disappearance of Chelsea Grimm, a 32-year-old woman who disappeared in a national forest not far from the Grand Canyon. She was only a few days into her cross-country trip from her home in San Diego, traveling to a friend's wedding in Connecticut, when she simply disappeared in the woods. Chelsea was born in 1991, growing up on the East Coast in Connecticut. She studied psychology at Pace University, then graduated from NYU with a master's in social work, and began working for the New York City Department of Education, caring for kids as a social worker. Chelsea was very loving, very compassionate, I mean, as you can imagine, right, working with kids. But it seems that after working in New York for a while, it seems like she wanted to do more, be more adventurous. She was always described as a very skilled photographer. So she kind of wanted to, maybe do something like that, help people in some other way. And so she'd eventually move across the country to San Diego and continue doing social work, but kind of leaning more and more into her passion of photography. And so, it was on September 24th, 2023 that Chelsea Grimm set out for Connecticut in her Ford Escape. Rubber meets the road, she was going to drive across the country. Now, her original plan was to actually fly from San Diego to Connecticut, but she found out that the airline she wanted to fly with, they wouldn't let her, bring aboard her beloved bearded dragon named Roz. So, cross-country trip it is, shucks. Now, the cross-country trip from, San Diego to Stanford, her home, that's 2,800 miles, or a 42-hour drive, and Chelsea, photographer, planned to document the entire trip with her camera. However, it was a mere 3 days into her adventure that Chelsea, it seems, had a change of heart. She called up her parents and she was kind of saying, I don't think I can do this. This is too big for me. She told them she wasn't going to continue, and by this stage she said she was in Arizona, and so she would just hang out here for a few days before heading back home to San Diego. It sounded like she wanted to just camp, in the desert for a few days and do some photography of, the beautiful Arizonan wilderness. But what's very strange about her being in Arizona is that she would have been 3 days into her cross-country road trip by this stage. And she was only in Arizona by this, she should have, that would have taken her 6 hours. She should have been much further, almost in Connecticut at this stage, and she wasn't. So it's like, what was she doing? What was taking her so long? Maybe she wasn't planning on going to the wedding at all, but who knows? Chelsea did make plans to have lunch with a friend in Phoenix, Arizona on the 28th of September, but she would never show. In fact, after that, she was never heard from again, or at least not from anyone who knew her. With no word from her for about a week, Chelsea Grimm was reported missing on October 4th, 2023. The next day, a discovery was made, giving them a clue. It was on October 5th that her car was found. Car was found with 2 flat tires by a couple of hunters in the Kaibab National Forest. This is an extremely remote place in the desert. The closest town, a good 40-minute drive. The hunters had seen the car parked in this unusual place and could see something was off about it due to its slanting, the flat tires. The car was locked, no one was inside, and some items were missing. So the hunters called the police, who ran the plates, who linked it back to Chelsea Grimm. So what happened? Was Chelsea, had she gone camping, in the forest? Well, see, missing from her vehicle was her phone, her wallet, some camping equipment, and her bearded dragon, Roz, which, she wouldn't have left the bearded dragon behind. So it would kind of seem likely that with the flat tires, and the flat tires were found to have been done just by the terrain, that maybe she was driving, she got a flat tire, and so she was like, well, I gotta huff it out of here. I'll grab my shit and go. Regardless, this wasn't good, and it's not exactly a place you kind of want to be out alone in. It also turned out that she'd been acting strangely kind of in the days leading up to this. I mean, well, first of all, as I said, she was in Arizona. She should have been much further if she was planning on driving across country by this stage. So what was she doing for the past few days? Nobody knows. Then, after she cancelled lunch with her friend, she drove north to these small little towns that dot this part of Arizona. Why she was there we don't know, but she tried to check into a hotel and pay in euros for some reason, saying she wanted to stay off-grid.
Unless you take euros, or anyone in town exchanges euros. I was trying to stay off the grid.
That same night, she was stopped by a police officer responding to a suspicious vehicle not far from a graveyard.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing great. Are you doing all right?
Yeah, I just was doing a photo shoot of the lost soldiers and got a little emotional, so I was crying before I got...
I'm just making sure someone called it in, so...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're quite all right. I mean...
I was just doing a photo shoot, yeah. Packed up. I'm going to leave soon.
Okay.
But I just didn't want to drive like that. Sad.
I got you. You've been smoking a little bit of marijuana?
Earlier today, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have your license on you by any chance?
Yeah.
It gets me all emotional, too.
Yeah, it's just, you know, I'm trying to do a series on the lost and the forgotten people in this country.
I know you told me that you smoked marijuana and you're kind of... Well, obviously, I would be in an emotional state as well. I don't know if you want somebody else to drive you or if you just want to hang out here for a little bit longer. You're more than welcome to do that.
Yeah, if it's okay with you, if I hang out here for another like 15 or 20 and then head on the road, that would be my plan,
sure.
I think.
Yeah, I don't see any signs of impairment or anything like that. So.
Chelsea seemed pretty upset. Who knows if it was about these soldiers or no.
Yeah, no, I mean, with my eyesight and then crying, it's not the best combination at night.
Dude, I totally
I was like,
understand.
I'm just gonna like cry on the road, or I'm just gonna sit here and cry. So
Do you have like a hotel around here or anything?
I don't. I was actually thinking of just camping for the night, but I wasn't really sure exactly yet.
Gotcha. Well,
I didn't plan to be here until sunset.
Okay, you can't camp in the city limits. It's kind of like a city statute we have.
Okay, good to know.
But you can always go. I don't know if you can see like the yellow lights over there, the Loves. It's a trucker stop in the gas station area. You can just sleep there. Nobody will bother you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love that. Cool.
All right. Well you have a great time.
That was also the day when activity on her phone and her banks stopped. The next time she was seen, and this is actually the last time she was seen, was September 30th. So like 4 or 5 days before her car was found. And she was seen camping, kind of again in the same area. She was seen camping by a woodcutter. He went to check on her. She said she was fine. She was just in the area, you know, doing some photography. Then a few days later, she was reported missing. Her car was found. And her camera, by the way, was left. It was found in her car, which was, again, kind of unusual. I mean, her camera... Most photographers would never leave a camera behind, especially one that was, you know, quite expensive, the lenses and such, like hers would have been. The fact that her camera was left behind would also lead you to believe that maybe she'd been in some kind of trouble and had to huff it out of there, as opposed to her driving to this national forest and then going camping, where she would want to go and take pictures, which is why she said she was in the area in the first place. And another thing is that the final photo on her camera is weird. It's a picture of her holding flowers. All the doors of the vehicle are open. Just seems creepy. There's something creepy about that picture.
You wouldn't wish it on anyone.
It's been 2 weeks since Stephen and Janet Grimm have heard from their daughter every morning since, waking up with hope that will change.
It's been just a horrible, horrible, horrible experience. Her pet was gone. Her wallet with her credit card, her debit card, her driver's license was gone. Clothes and a sleeping bag were gone.
Chelsea's camera was left behind in her car, which is where the sheriff's office found the most recent photos taken by her. Officials immediately launching a search effort in the area from the air and on the ground. They say no foul play is suspected.
Even if it seems trivial, we're hoping that someone saw her.
Now, most people think that Chelsea was having some kind of mental issue, which led her to be, well, where she was and what she was doing. That, mixed with drugs, the officer said he could smell weed, perhaps led her to go into the woods. The flat tires seemed like it was from the road she was driving on, and maybe it made her paranoid. Huge searches have been done to find her in the forest, and all have come up empty. Likely she got lost out there, so you think they would find her, but as I always say in my national park horror stories, no, you probably won't, because forests and national parks are extremely big. You never know what could have happened to her out there, if she is still even there. So theories are flat tire, she tried to huff it out of there. Another theory, she had a mental health issue. Same thing again, she tried to huff it out of there or went into the woods and something happened. Her parents would say that she had some mental health issues, but like nothing like this. Never anything even remotely close to this, nothing major at all, nothing that ever truly concerned them about her state. But her dad would also say that she was having trouble with a boyfriend at the time, and that he thought she was scared of him and that she was running from him. Now, I must say though, of course, police investigated all of her romances. The police don't believe there's anything there at all. Chelsea Grimm disappeared about a year ago as I'm posting this video. Hopefully, there will be news about her being found soon. Marion Barter was a teacher and a mother of two, living in Southport, Australia. This is a little town just north of the city of Gold Coast in Queensland. Come the year 1997, Marion, 51, had been married 3 times, divorced 3 times. She was an outstanding teacher, and she had a number of secrets. Ones she kept from everybody. Secrets that would only begin to spill out over the spring and summer of 1997, because that is when she vanished, under very unusual and concerning, disturbing circumstances. Marion was described as an adventurous woman, vivacious, lively. She was a loving mother, an excellent teacher, but it seemed like she was someone who simply wanted more from life. At 51 years of age, it sounded like she wasn't where she wanted or expected to be. It sort of seemed like she was going through some kind of midlife crisis or something like that. This is perhaps why she began to do a number of strange things, which led to her dark and disturbing disappearance, and perhaps even led to a strange man. In April of 1997, Marion sold her home for a loss of about $15,000. She then changed her name legally to Florabella Natalia Marion Remical. She had a password in that name, but she didn't tell a soul. She told nobody about her legally changing her name from Marion Barter to this mouthful. Everything she would do seemed very out of character for our Marion. Shortly then after, she resigned from her job and she said she wanted to move to England and teach there and travel all across Europe. And this was something she would do. In the summer of 1997, mid-June, she upped and she left. She flew from Australia to England. She left her kids behind, her 2 kids. They were both in their 20s. And so she was traveling around England. She was sending postcards from all these various towns and all these various places back to her kids, to the school where she worked, to former students, saying, oh hey, having a great time. She called her daughter, Sally, August 1st of that year, saying, yeah, here in England. Sally would say nothing seemed amiss during that call. She was having a hell of a good time. But that would also be it. After that, nothing more would be heard from Marion after that call. People did begin to speculate, sort of begin to, worry, but, Marion traveling throughout England, and she said she wanted to travel throughout Europe. Yeah, she's probably fine. And, she'd send back postcards all the time, but the postcards were always sent from different places. So they couldn't exactly kind of track her down. But things became extremely worrying on October 23rd of that year, 1997. It was her son Owen's birthday, and Marion was always described as a very loving mother. She would call. She would make sure as shit to call her son happy birthday. But when she didn't call, that's when people really began to say, okay, whoa, buddy, slow your roll, something's not right here. They began to try and track her down. They are still trying, because that was when the secrets began to kind of spill out. Sally contacted her mom's bank and found that $5,000 a day had been withdrawn from her mom's bank account over a period from August to September. But each withdrawal, those $5,000 a day for like 3 weeks, each withdrawal had been made in Australia. Had she even left? Then in October, a big huge lump sum was taken out of her mom's bank account, $80,000, and transferred to some mysterious bank account. It did appear that she had actually left the country. The postcards were from like legit places. Like one was Royal Tunbridge Wells. Look at, fair play to you, we get the royal in there. So she was in England for a time, but it appeared she had returned and never told a soul. She left Australia June 22nd, and she returned under her new name August 2nd. This was to Brisbane, north of her hometown, and she didn't tell anyone she was home. She kept the charade going that she was abroad. Now, when Sally learned of this, she went to Brisbane, hey, my mom apparently returned home here. Can I have a missing persons report, please? And the police said, no, your mom's fine. She doesn't want to speak to you. But the police also never physically saw Marion. When Marion returned to Australia, this was on August 2nd, the day after she had called Sally, her daughter, for the last time, saying, I'm having a great time in England. And on the Customs and Immigration form she had to fill out, coming back to Australia, she said she was married and living in Luxembourg, and she would only be in Australia for a couple of days. Then, about 10 days later after that, her Medicare card was used in Australia. Don't know what it was used for, and then that was it. She just fell off the face of the earth. And over the next decade, some very weird stuff came out about who Marion may have been involved with, who she maybe ran off with. A scam artist, a possible killer, who maybe had promised Marion a new life, and instead ended it. In 2013, Sally got a message on Facebook from a stranger. Natalia is alive, but you never see her again. It was not her intention to disappear. She was forced. Sally then, her daughter, who really was like leading the investigation into her missing mom, like over the few years, she would team up with some internet sleuths and find out a couple of things about maybe who her mom had been in contact with. Marion had changed her name, Florabella Natalia Marion Remical, and they found in a French-Australian newspaper a Lonely Hearts ad. It was from a man named F.N. Remical, looking for a wife. Tracing that name and the number attached, it led to a Frederick Remical, also known as Frederick de Hedaveri, and when confronted by Sally, did he have anything to do with her mom's disappearance? He denied it, but he did say that he knew a man named Rick Bloom, who in the 80s had stolen his identity, had stolen Frederick Remical's identity, and had been using his name. So Rick Bloom was using these very strange aliases, including Mr. Remical. Rick Bloom also changed his name legally 11 times and was known to use over 50 different aliases. He would later admit to, yes, having had an affair with Marion, having placed that ad, which is the only like Remical link they could find. I mean, that was what everybody was questioning. Why did she change her surname to Remical? This is the only Remical they would find. He'd say, yeah, I placed that ad. He would speak French, one of the main languages spoken in Luxembourg. So it seemed like, well, yes, maybe had she gone to meet him? Had he promised her a new life and then... And more started to come out, because it would find out there'd be a startling number of coincidences between Marion's travels that we know of and Rick Bloom's travels, because he left Australia in June of 1997 under a different name. A week later, Marion did. Then he returned to Australia late July 1997. 2 days later, Marion did. He opened a new bank account. £80,000 was transferred from Marion's to a mysterious bank account. Then, just after that money was transferred, he closed this mysterious bank account. 3 women would come forward, saying he had met them via Lonely Hearts adverts. They met Rick, he offered them an exciting life, he said he was a rich European businessman, tried to get them to sell everything, would get angry if they refused, and ultimately took from them tens of thousands of dollary dues. He would take these women on trips across Europe to places like Royal Tunbridge Wells, where he once lived. You can see where this is likely going. Rick Bloom has denied murdering Marion Barter. An inquest into Marion's disappearance ultimately concluded in 2024 that Marion was no longer alive. That Rick Bloom does know more, but no charges against him were recommended.
Sally Layden had the support of dozens of loved ones as a coroner today confirmed what she's known all along.
Coroner's just told me officially my mum's deceased. So that's the first time I've heard that in 27 years.
Her mother, Marion Barter, disappeared in 1997 after changing her name, selling her house and quitting her job. She'd been dating a man named Rick Bloom who lied about his identity. Today, Coroner Teresa O'Sullivan found the pair travelled to the UK, returning without telling Marion's family. She found Bloom preyed on vulnerable women and withheld crucial information about Marion from the inquest. She also found New South Wales Police bungled the missing persons investigation, recommending it now be referred to homicide detectives.
And so we do not, to this day, know what happened in the strange disappearance of Marion Barter. I mean, her daughter, Sally, is the one who's kept this in the news, which ultimately led to an inquest and more coming out. And likely the only man, the last man who probably was with Marion Barter, who took her to Europe, who maybe took her back to Australia. And then something happened. And all her money mysteriously vanished, which he has a history of known for. And now he is off the hook. For now, he is off the hook. This next story takes us deep into beautiful New England, close to the Canadian border, if you can believe that. Because in the small town of Montgomery, there is a place called the Black Lantern Inn, sort of a B&B/restaurant featuring all locally sourced produce. The reason I'm yapping away about it is because in 2004, a young woman named Brianna Maitland, She was working there. She would disappear under very creepy circumstances. Brianna had spent her entire life in Vermont. She was born to a guy named Bruce and a woman named Kelly. She grew up on a farm in a place called East Franklin, growing up with her older brother. Brianna was smart, she was funny, she was trained in jiu-jitsu, so you know. Don't mess with the big B. As she grew older now, Brianna decided to move out of home at a very early age. She just wanted to be alone, she was an independent spirit, and her parents would say, doesn't believe there was any, they would say there was no stressors at home which would want her to leave early. She just wanted to be by herself. She wanted to be closer to her friends. She would in fact transfer high schools to be closer to her friends. Brianna, she would move to a few different places before settling down and moving in with a friend named Jillian, and she began working when she was 17 years of age at the Black Lantern Inn, and she was attending nearby Enosburg High School. Now, this entire area is pretty wild and rural. The town she attended school in, Enosburg Falls, 1,300 people lived there. The town she worked in, Montgomery, 1,200 people. A lot of the places around here would be for hunters, farmers, and leaf peepers during the fall. Brianna, though, away from her parents, started partying a lot. Maybe a bit too much. Maybe hanging out with bad people a little too much. Maybe doing a little bit of drugs too much. In fact, this all then would lead to an incident in February 2004 when Brianna was at a party hanging out, having a good time with a load of friends. At that party, she would be attacked by another girl, a woman named these are like late teens. Her name was Keely Lacrosse. See, at the party, Brianna, who had been there with her boyfriend, Brianna was somebody who always kind of like wanted to be liked, wanted a bit of attention, and so at that party it's believed she flirted with a guy. She had no intention of like taking it further, just, everybody loves a bit of attention. But the guy she flirted with, well, Keely was his girlfriend. Keely was not too happy about that. She just wouldn't have it, right? So, well, she kind of lashed at Brianna, and Brianna says, "Whoa, I'm Audi 5000. She left the party, goes to sit in her boyfriend's truck, waiting for him to take her home. Keely got out there before Brianna's boyfriend did. Brianna winds down the window. Keely lashes at her and starts beating 7 shades of shite out of her, punching her through the window. She gives her black eyes, a broken nose, concussions. Brianna has to go to hospital and would reluctantly file a police report. Now, reluctantly, because as I said, Brianna kind of wanted to be like, she didn't want to, upset anybody, do anything like that. And it's also believed to be one of the reasons why Brianna didn't, she was trained in jiu-jitsu. She could defend the hell out of herself. She didn't fight back because, well, she wanted to be like, didn't want to upset people, and probably knew that if she did jiu-jitsu on her, Keely might end up even worse than with a couple of black eyes, broken nose, and concussion. Although it's also like, what's the point in learning jiu-jitsu then? And so it was Friday, March 19th, 2004, about 3 weeks after that party, that Brianna vanished. That day, she had been shopping with her mother in a town called St. Albans in the area. And then something weird happened while her mom and Brianna were shopping. They'd been in the checkout line, after grabbing a few bits and bobs. And while they were in the checkout line, Brianna looked outside, like to the car park at the window, and she's seen something. She says to her mom, Kelly, I'll meet you outside. Kelly then pays for the items, goes and meets Brianna in the car park, and she said Brianna was very upset. Something had happened. She was very agitated, and her mom didn't really want to ask too much about it, but I don't know what she'd seen out there or who she had met out there more likely, but it wasn't good. Then that evening, Brianna's off to work. Black Lantern in time. She'd work in the restaurant, doing bits and bobs and all that sort of thing. She finishes up her shift at around 11:20 p.m. She gets into her car to go drive home. She had work early the next day. Go drive home to, she was staying with her friend Jillian, though she never made it home. Now, what followed was the weekend. This was Friday night when Brianna was leaving work, and Jillian, not seeing her over the next couple of days, assumed Brianna was staying with her boyfriend. But as time goes on and the next week begins, she's thinking, okay, what's going on here? She calls Brianna's parents. Have you seen her? Heard from her? They had not. They file a police report. No one had heard from her. Quite simply, she had left work, that finished up her shift as per normal, gotten into her car, was driving down a short distance through, though, quiet, deep, dark woods of Vermont. She never made it. It was then Thursday. Brianna's parents, they go to the police station with photographs of Brianna, what she would have been wearing, all that kind of stuff that police would, need to send out far and wide. And as they're sitting in the police station describing Brianna, describing her car, one of the cops goes, Is this her car? They say that was her car, but she never would have left it in that state ever. It had been found on March 20th, which was the day after she had last been seen. It looks like it had been reversed into an abandoned house, reversed quite heavily as boards of the house had broken. Inside the car was a water bottle, an unsmoked cigarette, and 2 of Brianna's paychecks from work. She was 17 years old, living by herself. She would have needed those paychecks. And the house was very creepy. You take one look, that's like haunted as shit. But the car was the real scary thing. The doors were unlocked, no evidence inside. So who had left it there? Probably not missing Brianna. The search began in earnest, but from Jump Street they were shit out of luck. No forensics were found inside the car, no signs of a struggle, no blood or anything. It was just in this very weird and creepy location in a manner it should not absolutely be. The police had found it on the Saturday, which was the afternoon after she had left work. They didn't report it missing because the police officer, he had like the next few days off, so he never bothered to kind of follow up on it or give it to another officer. And there was snow in the area, but it had melted by the time the police found it, so there was almost no evidence there to say how her car had gotten it and where was she. There was witnesses though who had been in the area that night. One witness said he was driving past that abandoned, the old Dutch burn house is what they called it. He would say he was driving by between 11:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. and he'd seen the car there with the headlights on. Now, Brianna had left work at 11:20 p.m. so it's likely, if his timing is correct, something happened like that as soon as Brianna would have left work. Her car ends up here and she ends up nowhere. Another driver driving at the same time would say he saw the car also there, but the turn signals were flashing. The car was seen by a couple other people the following morning until the police eventually found it. So Brianna had been driving home. Maybe she had been planning on meeting somebody on the way, but that seemed unlikely as she said she was due for work early the following morning, so she just wanted to get home and go to bed. So it's unlikely she was going to meet somebody. Had she been driving a hitchhiker? Or somebody else had followed her? Somehow got her to pull over. Brianna was trained in jiu-jitsu, so the guy who... presumably the guy, or people who overpowered her must have done so, knowing that she was trained in jiu-jitsu, and then who knows what happened to her, abducted her. And no evidence in the car of a struggle or of blood.
Hoping to find new clues, rescue teams from the state police resumed their search for Brianna Maitland, a Franklin County teenager who vanished on a cold night in March of 2004. They combed cornfields in the town of Montgomery, where her car was found backed into the side of an abandoned house the morning after her disappearance. Police believe Maitland was the victim of foul play.
When we conduct these searches, we're always hopeful that we're going to find evidence, and evidence that will help us answer any questions that we have unanswered, which in this case are many.
Police combed the area and found nothing around her car. The FBI would process the scene and say foul play was likely. The uncashed checks left behind made it seem very unlikely that she had ran away. A week after she disappeared, state police received an anonymous tip saying she was being held in a house by drug dealers. This house was raided. The 2 drug dealers were known acquaintances of Brianna's, but she wasn't there. No evidence she was there was found. And a number of claims would come up against these 2 drug dealing lads who lived in the area that, as I said, were known acquaintances of Brianna's. One was that she owed them money for drugs, so they had a grudge against her. So they abducted her, they cut her up, and they left her deep in a bottom of a lake or something. Or other people would claim that she had been tied to a tree and left in the deep dark woods of northern Vermont, where she would never be found. But what happened earlier on that day at the store that left her, so upset? Over the years, tips came and went. A woman in a casino in Atlantic City was said to greatly resemble her. She has never been identified. Police thought that maybe serial killer Israel Keys could be responsible, as he had been in this area before. Or is it linked to Maura Murray, another unsolved disappearance which occurred around the same time, less than 100 miles away? The most recent news about the strange and baffling disappearance of Brianna Maitland came in 2022. If you can believe that, when police said they found DNA on an item of interest that was found within the car. They traced who this DNA belonged to. They said this person was cooperating with the investigation, and that's sort of it.
The 11 individuals that we compared the DNA to were people, they were persons of interest. That's how we identified them throughout the investigation in the course of the last 18 years. It was DNA that we had collected in the course of investigation.
That person at this time is not considered a suspect in the case. Vermont State Police say because of the ongoing nature of the investigation, they are unable to provide any further details.
They have not released anything else. The only clue behind Brianna's car being found in a very weird position just makes this case more baffling than many missing persons cases. The city of Gallup lies in western New Mexico, and it's surrounded by all of these reservations. It's called, the town is actually nicknamed the Heart of Indian Country. When you're thinking of western, like old 50s cowboy movie, you're probably thinking of a place like Gallup, or at least the surrounding, countryside. It's not only known for its frontier spirit or the amount of Native Americans who live here, but also for the countless movies that were filmed right here. These days, about 20,000 folk call it home, but we ain't going to these days, baby doll. We're going to the mid-80s, when a young girl named Anthonette Cayedito, she lived there. Anthonette Cayedito was nicknamed Squirrel, and she was the eldest of 3 daughters to a woman named Penny, a single mom. Anthonette was born in 1976, making her 9 years old when our story takes place, the spring of 1986. She was known as very affectionate, caring, loved music, Michael Jackson, very important to her. She loved her Bible studies, but she was also known as just very, wise beyond her years. She was only 9 years old, but she would be, motherly to her 2 younger sisters. She helped out her mom Penny a lot, looking after them as they grew. After their dad left, Anthonette became a second mother to young Wendy and young Sadie. She would go far. That's what everyone would say about her. She would go far. She had it all. Unfortunately, she never got far at all. See, the disappearance of Anthonette Cayedito, I would say this is like kind of every parent's worst nightmare, but I think, yeah, you don't have to be a parent to see how horrifying this was. And it all began on the evening of April 5th, 1986. That Saturday evening, Penny had gone out to a local bar, a few scoops with some of her friends, and she'd left Anthonette, Wendy, and Sadie back home, but they were in, the company of a babysitter. Now, 33-year-old Penny would often pop out with friends, for beers down local pubs and the bars and whatnot, but she'd always leave her kids with a responsible adult, so nothing strange so far. Penny arrived home at about midnight and she sent the babysitter off herself, but then it seems like she stayed up for quite a number of hours with her 3 daughters. It seems like Penny and Anthonette, they stayed up just talking, while the 2 younger kids, they headed off, they slipped off to bed. Then Penny said she herself went to bed at around 3 AM, young Anthonette likely heading off to bed herself, when there came a knock at the door. The following morning, around 7 AM, Penny gets up, right? Bleary-eyed, goes to start rousing her kids. She goes into Sadie's room, wakes her gently. Goes into Wendy's room, wakes her too. Then she goes into Anthonette's room, and Anthonette is not there. Goes looking around the house. She cannot find Anthonette at all inside the home. She goes to the front door, which she was sure she locked when she sent the babysitter home. The door was unlocked now. She goes neighbor to neighbor. Anybody seen her? Nobody has seen her. She calls the Gallup police to report her 9-year-old daughter is missing. Unfortunately, however, the full search didn't begin until the following day, which was Monday, and by this stage any signs of Anthonette would be long gone. She had vanished into the night. Inside the home where she had vanished from, nothing was missing. She hadn't taken anything with her, and there were no signs of a disturbance, it being clear from the get-go they were dealing with an abduction. Some people did come forward with some information from the night. There was a guy from the bar who said he had been at the bar, drinking with Penny. They'd gotten into some kind of argument. He said that around 3 AM, 3:30 AM, he had knocked on the door to, talk to Penny to apologize to her. But, no answer, so he went home himself. And his alibi was cleared. He had gone home to a friend's house and stayed there. He hadn't, interacted with anybody in the house that night. And in fact, searches in the area were largely fruitless for the first year. They brought in dogs to try and trace her scents from the house, and the dogs led nowhere. They couldn't find any scent of where she had gone. No one, it seems, that night in Gallup had seen anything notable of, a missing girl. But one person, they did have a secret. In fact, maybe more than one person. The next clue, it would be almost a year, 1987, April 1987, that a clue would come in. And this clue, it was a phone call. This is pretty disturbing, just as like a warning of what happened. On April 12th, 1987, so almost exactly a year after Anthonette Cayedito disappeared, the Gallup Police Department got a phone call from a child identifying herself as Anthonette Cayedito. Call only lasted a few seconds, and it ends with her screaming as the phone is taken away from her. As a warning, some of you might want to close your ears for the call.
Police department. Hello. I'm Anthonette Cayedito. Okay, whereabouts in Albuquerque? Hello? Anthonette, where are you? Anthonette.
So the call did not last long enough to be traced. It was only about 20 odd seconds, and she claimed she was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So the police, they went to Albuquerque, but I mean, it's a big city. They had already put up missing posters, flyers of her there. Didn't unveil anything new, and as I said, they couldn't trace the call. It wasn't really helpful at all. But there's a couple of things interesting about that call that I just want to point out for you. Anthonette Cayedito, if that was her, because some people said it's a hoax, it's not her, whatever. But let's say it was her. She says she's in Albuquerque, and so likely what would you dial if you tried to get help? You would dial 911. That couldn't be possible then. If she was in Albuquerque and dialed 911, she would have gotten Albuquerque police. But this call went straight to Gallup, so that means that whoever was calling must have known the local, number, right? The local police number. How many of you know your local police? I mean, I'm going to say probably not a lot of you. Some of you, I'm sure, do, but most people don't know it. And a 9-year-old girl knowing her local police department's number? Possible, kind of unlikely. So who knows if that was or not, but let me know your thoughts on that one. But regardless, a horrifying clue came, but the police had no way to follow up on it other than renewing their search in Albuquerque, which is a large city. Now, the police did have their suspicions about the family. They publicly voiced them that somebody may know something. Maybe Penny had hid some other information, but nothing really came out. Then something else interesting happened 4 years after Anthonette Cayedito disappeared. When Antoinette's father, a guy named Larry Estrada, his sister disappeared, Luisa. She was a mentally challenged young woman, and she'd been going for a walk in the park, and then she vanished. She was 25 years old. She vanished. She'd be found a month later in Mexico, in Juarez. She had been abducted and taken there, and who knows what happened to her, but at least she was found safe. So people began to think this guy's daughter disappears, and then his sister disappears. She was found in Mexico. Was Anthonette Cayedito taken to Mexico? Over the years, witnesses would come forward, saying they believed they had seen her in various different places. One woman, a truck drove by. She heard screaming coming from the truck, a child shouting, "Help me, help me." But that was one possible sighting. So, but I mean, that's one of those ones where it's like, either it's Anthonette Cayedito or it's not. Either way, it's horrifying. Another story was even more disturbing. Was a waitress was serving this young girl who matched Antoinette's description, and she was with this older couple, this unkempt couple, the waitress would describe them as, and this young girl kept knocking cutlery off the table in the diner, and so the waitress would come and pick it up. Every time she did, this young girl would squeeze the waitress's hand. Then, when they left, waitress was cleaning up their table, she finds a note saying, "Help me, call the police." But by this stage, she called the police. They were gone. The waitress didn't cop it while they were there because the diner was just incredibly busy. But that's, again, whether that was Antoinette or not. It's disturbing. But one of the biggest clues would only come out 5 years after Anthonette Cayedito disappeared, and it would be Wendy who had been holding this secret the entire time. Now, Wendy was only 5 years old the night of. When she was 10, she told a story to the FBI that there was a second knock on the door that night, and that she had seen Antoinette being abducted. She said, once again around 3 a.m., somebody had knocked on the door. Antoinette had gone up to the door. A man had spoken through the door. Antoinette opened it. There was these two men there. They grabbed her, reefed her out of the home, and threw her into this brown van while Antoinette was screaming. This brown van then sped off. And in fact, another witness had said they had seen a brown van in the area that day. Why Wendy never mentioned this for 5 years. Why she never mentioned this, we don't know. She was only 5 years old at the time. Who knows what was going on in her head. Wendy's life would later spiral into drugs and addiction and gangs. She would eventually, though, be able to turn it around. But I'm guessing her not saying this for quite a long time affected her greatly. The searches went on. They continue to this day, and they've all come up fruitless. Police have always suspected Penny of either hiding information, maybe even allowing her daughter to be taken, to be trafficked, She did change her stories a few times, and she mentioned once that she didn't come home alone that night, and she also failed a lie detector test. There was also mention of some guy, only known as Emiliano. Who knows who he is, but allegedly in the days leading up to Anthonette's disappearance, he had taken a keen interest in her, bringing her flowers, having her sit on his lap, that kind of thing. This guy was somebody Penny never mentioned. In fact, Penny never mentioned this creepy guy until somebody else mentioned it in Penny, like while the police were there, and Penny was like, "Oh yeah, I guess I better admit it." But who knows if Penny knew more about what happened to her daughter, but she passed away in 1999. And Anthonette Cayedito, probably the most disturbing disappearance in this video, is still missing. Everybody in this video is still missing to this day. So you know what about any of these? Do they look familiar? Please call the police. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this whole video. It means so much to me. A shout out to the folks over on Patreon who are helping support and keep running that chapter. If you ever want to join, you get early access, ad-free versions of every single video. There is a whole playlist of Patreon exclusive videos, and there's a Patreon-only Discord where we're always yapping away about something. Or you can check out the That Chapter podcast, which is podcast-only, podcast-exclusive stories released every single Monday morning. It is free, and it's available on all platforms. But until the next whole video, which will be up every Tuesday, I'll see you then. Please take care of each other, and please take care of yourselves. Because I love you. Mike out.